Evolutionary Underground Supplements, episode 31 is coming your way. Today we're talking about why the supplement industry should not be trusted. And look, in this one, we're going to go over some topics. Why the supplement industry is how it is. We're going to talk about the crooked businessmen are targeting, worst supplements that are shady, best supplements that actually work that you should be spending your money on, and why N2BM is a trusted and respected supplement company. First, to remind everybody, we are Apple, we are on Spotify, we have different platforms that we are on. Got millions and millions of listens on our podcast all over the place. Some platforms we don't have very much traction on because the algorithms hate us. So the best way that you can help us out is by liking, subscribing, leaving comments, doing all that good stuff. We want to grow this podcast organically. We want to bring you the best information on this podcast. That's what it's all about. We're not using this podcast for clickbait. We're not using this podcast to create drama and all this nonsense out there. We actually going to do this the right way. Seems like that's been a foregone conclusion in the world today, right? So we are one of the few podcasts to actually bring you the good information. So let's start with the first one, Mobster. You used to own a supplement company. Why don't you start us off? Answer the question why the supplement industry is how it is today.
It's a historical thing, Steve, and I've talked about some of the Iron Game history on previous shows. And one of my favorite books in that particular regards is Muscle, Smoke, and Mirrors. And I believe book 3, for those of you that collect such things, there's a big section in that book talking about the history of supplements. It's quite simply in terms of the bodybuilding, which is the mass market and the people that we talk to the majority of times that listen to the show, that most of the companies, including Weider and York Bible, run by Hoffman, sold weightlifting kits. And it didn't occur to them for some time, especially Hoffman, that you're only going to sell a weightlifting kit once or twice a year, a new piece of equipment, a new bit of apparatus once or twice a year. But supplements, you can sell every month. Part of it in terms of the general population is that we've talked about this on other shows, whether we're talking about vitamin minerals, things for your skin, or your fingernails, or your hair, or your eyesight, is for the most part, and you and I could probably be guilty of this from time to time, we don't eat as well as we should. Food, etc., is more processed. And I think there's also the argument to be made in terms of, and it is made in Randy Roach's book, that and especially in America, Steve, the cost of healthcare is so fucking high and going up all the time. And we're looking at the similar process and procedure starting to sort of be more privatized and more services for sale here in the UK, that we use supplements to assist our health somewhat. But again, it's kind of a right. Let me just give you a right the way back in the day, 200-300 years ago, and I only touch upon this briefly. You used to have people riding around in the wild west of America with the cowboys and Indians and the cows and random ranches and God knows what, Steve. A snake oil salesman would come to town, and if you went to see the doctor was as often as not the local barber. It wasn't a qualified doctor. So you were looking for something, a panacea, a liquid, snake oil, if you like, to help you cure bad teeth, bad hair, bad skin, the rash. Is this supposed to be swollen? All this kind of thing. So we've always looked for quick fixes, etc. So there's an element, because there are good and bad supplements and there are good and bad companies, Steve. There's always going to be an element, I think, and American and UK government both recognise this, other governments too, of course, that there are certain products which are to be avoided, that are a waste of time, certain products which are me too, and sometimes they've not got the research or the actual ingredient in a useful situation in it. And that's just a businessman who doesn't really understand the product, but just wants to put a product there because he can see that it sells. There are always going to be great products that work incredibly well, that are peer reviewed, have great research, and effective. Arguably, sometimes what happens is that these great products don't make much money. So when you're a supplement company, you need to look at what makes money. Now, my own sector, for the 8 years or so that we had a company called the Way Consortium, It doesn't exist anymore, so not promo. Um, we were one of the first bulk sellers in terms of £10 buckets of protein, £1 containers of creatine, and so on and so forth. We wasn't looking to put them into little corner shops, mar and pa supplement shops. We were looking to sell directly. There are two or three companies like that. One that grew very big here in the UK, Steve. I think the last time they looked at the value was around the 300 million pound mark. The original owner of that company sold it for a personal amount of cash in the order of about somewhere in excess of $100 million just for his part of the business. That's now owned by a much, much bigger company. A company that I worked with for years have grown again. Some years ago, the owner was driving around a Lamborghini. That was 10 years ago. God knows what they're doing now. They have television adverts and adverts on the London Underground and so on and so forth. So the idea that you had to be with the latest thing or the strongest pre-workout, whatever else, these prove that they did. It might be a good industry, yeah. So yeah, look, guys, the supplement business is good. The supplement business is bad. We're going to touch upon some of the scams. We're going to talk about the reasons why some companies are like that. I'm going to name certain examples without necessarily naming names for obvious reasons. And again, look, there's an argument to be made, certainly in terms of the scam seeds. And I think when I've mentioned this or touched upon this idea in the past, that the supplement industry, for one reason or another, it's not the only industry that's like this, but there has been times where it seemed to attract a certain kind of personality or certain, shall we call them, opportunists to the market versus, for example, if it happens in the car industry, those car companies don't last 5 minutes. Promise you the earth, but never produce a car. Maybe keep your deposit. In food is so I won't say regulated, restricted because it's an enormous amount of companies. It can be very hard to police every single aspect of it. But again, someone produces a moldy loaf of bread, it won't sell. An off pint of milk, it won't sell. Vegetables that are covered in insects, they won't sell. And at some point, they will be outed, and they will be outed very, very quickly. The supplement industry tends to be arguably as an extension to the food market, sometimes a bit of a grey area. And it can be a minefield. This is a part of the reason why we're doing this show, for the benefit of you listeners. It can be a minefield to navigate, meaning you need to understand why products that work aren't always sexy. Products that work can be promoted because they make the most money, and understand some products that look like they should work don't. And I'm going to give you a few examples of all of those kind of things. So yeah, let's know if about what we're talking about today, Steve.
Yeah, and let me jump in with that. Look, we got where we are today for a bunch of reasons, but I think the most simplest reason is that there are almost 100,000 supplements for sale right now in the United States. 100,000. Yet only a small fraction of those even tested by the FDA to determine if the ingredients are accurate. And look, at the end of the day, since COVID, we're talking about less than 1% of them are checked. So we don't even know what's on the label. I'll give you an example. Out of 100,000 supplements, 99,000 of them are not even checked to determine if the label is accurate. So just imagine the crazy thing that would happen if only 1% of stock trades were checked, or 1% of baby food was checked, or 1% of houses are checked after being built. Any industry would be a mess if that was the case. Hence, this is the main reason the supplement industry is the Wild West. On Amazon, I'll give you an example. You can open up your own supplement shop, post a supplement that claims the world and claims 100 of the best ingredients, but that only has creatine in it and gets away without any worries. So, of course, every crooked businessman out there is going to jump into the industry if that's how it is. I mean, that's just how it goes. The market will determine things in any market, like crypto. Look at cryptocurrencies. 99% of cryptos that are put out there are scams. Why? Because the industry is not regulated enough to where you can literally put out a crypto that is a scam. You know it's a scam. You know it's not worth anything. But then you sucker people in to buy the crypto and you sell it to them and you make money. So any industry that has that is going to attract people to it, and that's the big problem with the whole supplement industry as a whole. At the end of the day, the way things are going, the FDA keeps getting cut and keeps getting cut. They want to cut the FDA. They want the industry to become more crooked. They want less regulation. And a lot of the people out there, a lot of these supplement owners, they've been pushing for this for years. Of course, they want the supplement industry not to be regulated. They make a fortune off the supplement industry. They allows them to have a 13-bedroom house, having the supplement industry like this. It's extremely crooked and it's extremely shady. So at the end of the day, that's how it is in this industry, and there's not much that we're going to be able to change. So you have to protect yourself. You have to know which supplement companies to trust. You need to know which people to trust. And there's different ways that you can do that, and that's really what we're going to talk about on this podcast. So just imagine, like, if only 1% of baby food was checked, what would happen if 1% of houses that are built were checked after being built to make sure that everything is correct in the house? What would happen, do you think, if people had babies and the baby food they were getting, only 1% of the baby food was checked? Could you imagine the mass hysteria? Can you imagine mass hysteria of people's houses? If they built 100 houses in a neighborhood and they only checked one of those houses and they just didn't check 99 of the houses for structural defects or all this stuff, it'd be crazy. The lawyers would be all over, it'd be a big deal. But in the supplement industry, you can literally open up your own shop. You're going to start up your own website. You're going to put supplements on Amazon, and you can put any ingredient you want in it, and you can claim it has the best ingredients ever, and this ingredients and this much ingredients, and it has this and it has that, and it doesn't have shit in it. Maybe it has some creatine in it, or maybe it has some caffeine in it. You can sell it, and that there's nobody to stop you. So why do you think these people are all over this? So what's going to eventually happen, in theory, is that people will buy your product and they won't get results and they'll just stop buying it. So that's why these businessmen, they start up companies, they build them up, then they sell them, or then they just go bankrupt and then they start up a new company and they start all over again. And that's the way the industry works. So that's how we got here, guys. And you have to protect yourself. You have to know what's putting in your body. Mobster, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, guys, I can give you so many examples in all those particular regards from companies that we know were started by drug users that have been arrested, gone to jail, companies that were spiking their products with steroids, and one of the partners went to jail. I can give you examples of products where just in recent years, Steve, I think in the last 12 months, a bunch of big name companies and small name companies had their products tested because they were all producing a gummy type product. Just let me give you a sort of slightly outside the supplement industry example of something that was very popular about 3, 4 years ago, Steve. We were still playing around with the issues with COVID, and a lot of people were suffering with levels of anxiety. So, for some particular reason, CBD, which is a derivative of cannabis, became a very popular product. And you had a bunch of companies that produced products containing or supposed to be containing either CBD or more specifically CBD oil. And the idea was that you would take this amount of oil. Some products you have it as again as a gummy. Other ones you would use a dropper and drop the oil under the tongue, and so on and so forth. So and we've talked about this on other shows where we talked about standardization, meaning that each product must have a certain effective amount of the product in it, and so on and so forth. When it comes to CBD oil, just as a way of example, the first products that came out had no standardization, which means one company's products, which would contain the oil, might be low grade or low percentage of the active ingredient, and another company's product might be absolutely amazing. In fact, arguably sometimes have too much of the effective ingredient. But the companies themselves weren't making efforts to make sure that there was a decent dose of the effective amount. They'd gone out, found a wholesaler, found a distributor, a supplier of CBD oil, brought this stuff by the barrel load, Steve, made a product containing the CBD oil and sold it as quickly as possible because people were making a demand for it. Over time, and towards the end of that little run of the popularity of CBD oil, and especially as COVID started to ease off and we had access to more things before, and people's anxiety levels started to drop, we started to see actual standardized products working their way into the marketplace with 20, 30, and 40% active ingredient. But this took a while. The industry almost needed to self-regulate itself. One of the issues, and this has happened again in the past, and again, I touched upon it at the beginning of the show when I said that one of the reasons we sometimes use supplements, and again for the mass markets for health, is that certain companies would take an abstract, and I mean literally an abstracted point of view, meaning they cherry-picked information from certain reviews and the idea that an ingredient or a supplement might possibly be useful for something, and then they took this to the nth degree. So you would see claims for some products, Steve, that claimed they could cure certain kinds of cancer or were effective against preventing certain kinds of cancer. And the FDA in America and the company, I think the food standards we have here in the UK, went absolutely crazy. One example is you cannot claim for any bodybuilding type supplement or health type supplement that it has medical-like effects. If it has a medical-like effect, it is a medication, and which is treated, we have a separate organization for that in this country, is treated in a certain specific way and has to be produced to a certain specific way, and so on and so forth, in a way that supplements are not. So you can't claim certain things, and you must never do that. And I could think of a dozen examples, Stephen. I talked about earlier on snake oil curing all kind. Literally, if you watch some of the old, early color cowboy movies, there was some snake oil salesman in some of these movies, and he would literally be standing on his box with his crate of product to his left hand side, Steve, claiming it killed all kinds of ills. Literally, those are the words that was coming out of the actor's mouth. And this is the way that certain products have been described in the past. A great example and a huge problem for the mass market is in the weight management type products. And very, very recently, and I didn't know this, Steve, because you and I have done shows on GLPs, the semaglutide, retatrutide, and so on and so forth, that there are now a bunch of supplement companies being told by the FDA and food standards, etc., organizations in the UK that they were promoting products that claimed to have GLP-like effects on the body. In other words, they would produce the supplements that pretended to be or claimed to be, but were not GLP-like products, which obviously these products should have existed before the GLPs came out. And the idea that they, in reality, is that they are just jumping on the bandwagon. They've seen just how popular and the money that's being made by companies that produce these products, pharmaceutical companies that produce these products, put that into the marketplace. We've done the research. We've told you about the fat loss. We've told you about the ability for these products to treat type 2 diabetes. And so supplement companies, some very grey market supplement companies, claimed that their products were as effective as these pharmaceutical products and reducing body fat, body weight, and treating type 2 diabetes, which, as Steve and I would have done with the shows that we talked about before, is complete and utter cobblers. So you can't make medical-like claims. You cannot say that your product is effective. And I'll give you another reason before we move on, Steve. Part of that, and this is something that happened in the UK more than the US, but I think the FDA want the same kind of level, is that you weren't, even if the product was good, even if it might be effective, it had little to no research properly done. When a new medication like the GLPs comes to the market, it is not uncommon for pharmaceutical companies to spend $100 million US or more on the research. The trial, we've talked about the types of trials, the type 1, the type 2, the type 3, and even I think the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 trials. We've talked about the numbers of people involved in those trials. How many times, Steve, have we seen supplement companies that have put that level of time and energy and investment into producing a product and then they don't? So one of the issues, and this is the reason why you must have, most companies have, all decent companies have, as an FDA disclaimer on the side of their products, even if they're legitimate 100% great companies, is they have to word it insofar as that they can put out that there's a good product that has these benefits, etc., etc., etc. But they must be clear that these are not classified or researched or tested, etc., 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 in the same way that a pharmaceutical product is. I think the flip side of that was if a product was effective, if it was great. Number one, the pharmaceutical company is almost certainly producing it because there's the money, let's go. And number two, it's just the amount of money that's involved. And if you and I could produce a supplement that could cure cancer, Steve, we would be billionaires overnight. And equally, the pharmaceutical companies would buy it from us and produce it on our behalf and pay us $300 or $400 million to take it off our hands. So, look, guys, you have to
I wouldn't
understand.
charge a penny for it. I'd rather die broke and cure
Yeah,
it than
but
take
curing
money.
cancer, exactly. Yes.
I know you would take the money though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'd have to, because then I could take the money and be happy that I've cured cancer, Steve, rich and happy. Whereas you just want to be happy.
No, you give the money to your cats.
Yeah.
The cats
We
would
eat salmon
inherit it.
every day. Let me give you some examples of scams and things to look out for, guys. Again, we don't want this show to be too negative. So let me give you an example. Actually, let me give you one example, Steve, of a supplement that works amazingly well, but is cheap, doesn't make the supplement companies a great deal of money, and yet there are still scams in this product. So the classic example here, Steve, is creatine, and more specifically, creatine monohydrate. Creatine monohydrate used to be expensive, but again, Steve and I have been doing these shows, and our experience in terms of lifting and in the iron game and using supplements goes back a long time. Between us, I think Steve just said on a previous show that we just recorded, we're probably approaching 60 years, 70 years between us over the time that we've been lifting and using supplements and so on and so forth. So when creatine first came out, Steve, it was fucking expensive. I'm going to say £100 a kilogram, which would be about $130, $140 per kilo. So that's per £2, per 2.2 pounds. And ironically, it was actually being put into herbal tea bags that were being given to racehorses. And Roy Duval here in the UK got hold of these herbal tea bags. What the fuck are they giving to these horses? Found out one of the ingredients was creatine. Looked at Paul Greenhalgh's research. Paul Greenhalgh was doing stuff, I believe, with Loughborough University, and was looking at the benefits for athletes and so on and so forth. So those few supplement companies that got hold of it was £100 a kilo. You can buy now, most recently, this will be £1. I paid £16, so about $20 for £1. So that's one fifth of the price 10 or 15 years ago, maybe longer. Now, just as an example, companies came out with products that were similar to creatine, different creatine phosphates, dihydro, this, that, and the other, different versions thereof. And the main reason they did that was the price for them was only a little bit more than the monohydrate. But the users, i.e. supplement users like ourselves, were familiar with it. And the idea that this was a new and improved version of creatine allowed them to charge more money for a product that wasn't as well researched, was a little bit more expensive for them to buy, but a lot more expensive for the end user, i.e. us. And arguably, if it was just a question of the difference between the two, then you would only have to take a little bit more of the cheaper monohydrate. Now, most recently, and I'm actually thinking of two examples, one old one, one recent one, creatine serum. You might recall this in your Ma and Pa shop, Steve, back in the day, was a liquid drink, pretty much mostly water with a bit of creatine and colour, perhaps a little bit of flavouring, that you would see on the shelves in the refrigerated section of your local supplement store. The problem was thus: it would come on an unrefrigerated truck, be wheeled into the store, possibly in the storeroom, and then only refrigerated when it was put into the cooler at the front, and only refrigerated when you took it out the cooler. And the problem was even worse because creatine in liquid, and specifically water in this example, degrades within about 40 to 60 minutes. So if it was 2 or 3 weeks old, and it was typically longer than that, you had very little usable ingredient in a product that did contain the creatine, but had degraded to the point where it was effectively useless by the time you consumed it. Most recently, and there was a big, actually see this online, Steve, it was newspaper articles, I believe it might have even made a few news programs. A bunch of companies in the US and the UK started producing creatine gummies. The idea of gummy type vitamins and gummy type medication as an easy way for people to take products was attractive to the end user, the buyer, the customer like us. The problem was, thus again, both in the case of the creatine serum with the degradation water, the process of manufacturing the gummy itself could involve heat, which would degrade the products. And then worse, Steve, I think they had 6 products, I'm going to say 5 or 6 products tested. Only one of the products was anywhere near to the label claim of 5 or 6 grams, whatever the fuck it was, on the package, that you could take 1 or 2 of these gummies, get your daily dose, easy peasy. And I'm thinking it can't be much easier than just putting a scoop of creatine in water and drinking it straight away. What's the fucking problem? How hard is that? But no, creatine gummy sexy, creatine gummy sells, but very few of these products actually contained any usable, if at all, never mind degraded or otherwise, dose of the actual creatine that they claimed on the label. And these were big name companies. Now, whether they'd subcontracted the work out to a gummy company or they'd done it in-house, they were just piss poor products. Like I said, Steve, there's so many examples of this. One of my favorite ones back in the day, and I kind of pulled this company up myself, was that for a brief period of time, and you can still buy this, you can buy a kind of protein called bovine colostrum. And essentially, it is the kind of milk that's produced very shortly after a cow gives birth to a calf. And the milk changes, as it does in human beings, from when the calf is very young, so as the calf grows, before it stops milking, before it's weaned off the milk. And so I think the first 10, 12, 14 days of the milk that comes out of the cow for the baby calf contains very, very high levels of colostrum. And there's a suggestion that the colostrum could be incredibly effective for its anabolic properties. So one particular company here in the UK claimed to be putting a dose of colostrum in their product at a level, because I was aware of the wholesale cost of colostrum, that was greater than the cost per dose of the product. So let's say, for example, Steve, they were charging $30 for a canister of this particular product, and you were supposed to use, I don't know, 100 grams at a time. I think they claimed something like 40 grams of that were colostrum. The problem was that colostrum was something like, similar to the creatine that I just talked about earlier, was £100 for a kilogram. So it would have been £10 for 100 grams. And yet I worked out the cost at that time, and this was some years ago, was £4. If you took the canister and you divided it by the number of servings, it worked out to be roughly £4, about $5.50 per serving, versus the cost of the colostrum alone being greater than the cost per serving based on the retail price. And that wasn't the price for the store to buy. It wasn't the price for the wholesaler or the regional distributor. This was the cost for the retail customer. So in other words, it was bullshit. It could not contain a dose at the wholesale price for the price that you were paying when you bought it from the shop. It just couldn't do that. It didn't make any things. One more example, labeling scams.
Hold on 1 second, buddy. I have someone at the door. Hold on. Yeah, sorry guys. I just had a FedEx guy knock on my door. I apologize for that. Mobster, continue what you were saying, and then we're
Yeah,
gonna get into some more supplements also. I'm gonna do a couple supplements too.
yeah. So I can give you a couple more examples. So one recent example, Steve, and I've got a note here. AI experts. You are starting to see way more videos on Instagram, on TikTok, etc., where they've been created to a very high level of resolution, although there's nearly always a kind of hint it's AI, and you kind of realize that it can't be correct, it can't be real. That's just crazy. And so one of the things that AI people have been using AI for, Steve, is to create what appears to be a doctor or nurse or medical expert talking to the camera about a product that they've just come across. And they use the right kind of terminology to make that sound like a medical type product, although it's a supplement. and this is how amazing it is, and so on and so forth. So that particular one, and again, they tend to aim for, and I mentioned it earlier on with the type 2 diabetes, the extremes of illnesses that you might get. So they're not going to be sitting there with an AI created advert for YouTube or TikTok talking about some sort of medication to rub for your dry scalp. It's going to be for cancer. It's going to be for eye health. It's going to be for sexual dysfunction. And you're sitting there, literally, supplement companies have done this in the past with photographs. So the AI expert will be sitting there. So not even a real person, but they will have a doctor's coat on, a stethoscope around their neck. There'll be the blurred, but not quite visible, proper medical certificate on the wall behind them. They'll be sitting in a room that appears to be some sort of doctor's office and talking away in a trustworthy kind of way about stuff which is completely and utterly made up. And if the company that produces it or the person that produces it is very, very good, they'll use certain keywords and phrases that make you, like a salesman, want to buy the product, but without actually saying 100% that the product is legitimate, approved, government certified, and so on and so forth. Labeling scams is one of my favorite ones, Steve. The way that you're allowed to word labels in the US versus the UK differs. And an example of this is thus: companies sell protein blends. Most companies that sell protein, and for that matter, creatine and vitamins, it's not a huge money maker for the company. Pre-workouts, pump type products, sexy products, products that produce boost or claim to boost, unlike the company we're going to talk about at the end of the show, organ health or testosterone, are big money makers for those companies. Protein does not. So they'll produce protein blends and they'll do a combination of cheap, less effective single source proteins, and they'll mix it together with a more expensive, more effective, for example, whey isolate. But they'll do it in such a way via the label to give you the idea, and you need to read the label very carefully to see that it's not that way. So, for example, let me give you a pretend label off the top of my head, Steve. It'll say whey isolate, whey concentrate, soy isolate, soy concentrate. This would be piss poor as it is anyway, but that's by the by. What you want is the isolate, whey isolate, and the whey concentrate to be the primary ingredients. In fact, you want the product to be mostly something like 60 to 80% the two combinations of whey, and you want only maybe 10, 15, 20% to be a soy concentrate and a soy isolate. There are some benefits from the soy isolate for heart health, for example, but I wouldn't want all of my protein product to be soy isolate. So, but if you word it in certain ways, right, inside of brackets and outside of brackets, if it's outside of brackets, the greater ingredient must be first and the less ingredient must be last. If it's inside of brackets, it can be in any fucking order. And in that situation, Steve, I would guarantee you that it's mostly soy concentrate, a little bit of soy isolate, a little bit of whey protein concentrate, and a little bit of whey protein isolate. But if you don't know the difference between the order of the wording and whether it's inside of brackets or outside, what's the other one, Steve, that we used to see a lot of? Proprietary blend, meaning there was a product selling a great ratio of ingredients, really effective, that got great results and was even shown to work in studies and have been tested by people for absolutely ages. And then a company produces a blend that's ever so slightly different. And sometimes it was still good, but they didn't want people to know the ratios, so they had a proprietary blend. Over time, proprietary blend tended to hide a huge list of sins, mostly meaning that it would have very, very little effective products, lots and lots of cheap ingredients, and are just enough that they could say that it
Yeah.
contained product X or product Y. Just as an example. Go on.
Send me a couple of examples of supplement scams that are out there, and I'll let you kind of touch up on that topic a bit more, Mobster. But one of the big things I've seen over the years is these protein in a pill things. And I fell for this scam many, many years ago, probably about 20, 25 years ago when I was younger in my early 20s. And look, I hate to see it. I hate to see it. Look, and if such a thing was plausible that you can get your protein from a pill, there would be no reason for us to eat any protein. And every animal across the world that's in a zoo, a lion, a tiger that needs a high protein diet would be given a pill instead of expensive meat. So, look, at the end of the day, there's no scientific evidence that taking protein pills does anything except drain your wallet. This is why you see these protein pill companies, they're fly by night. They'll come, they'll have a product, they'll get some sales, they'll sucker in people, and then people will realize that, yeah, this shit ain't gonna do nothing for me. I realized it pretty quick. After a couple of bottles, I'm like, this stuff is not doing anything for me except draining my wallet. And we're going to get into a crooked businessman in a second, but that was a crooked businessman that was selling it. And he's a piece of shit and he'll get his karma one day. Another big scam we see too is these workout drinks. Now, whether they're stim based pre workouts, whether they're electrolyte sports drinks, whether they're flavored protein powder that tastes like an ice cream shake, again, if there was such a thing as a drink that made you train better than lions and tigers, they'd be lining up, and hyenas, they'd be lining up, mobster, to drink it before they go for their hunt. I mean, they would have evolved to produce their own drinks. Like, yeah, let's make a drink, guys, before we have to go hunt a gazelle today. Yeah, let's get together and make a drink before we go. Look, every animal on earth, they drink water. Yeah, as humans, and then mammals, when they're babies, they drink their mother's milk. But once they get past the baby stage, they drink water for the rest of their life. They're not drinking anything else except water. Yeah, as humans, we enjoy beverages as something different. Look, and I get it. I'm not sitting here telling you don't drink anything else besides water for the rest of your life. I understand some people enjoy drinking this or drinking that. I'm not a moron. I get it. I get that concept. And I like to have something here and there that's not water. I might have some fresh fruit juice here and there. I might have a drink on a really hot day. Maybe I'll drink one of those electrolyte drinks that I get from a health food store that I scan, that I make sure it's good quality. But at the end of the day, the truth is you only need to drink water and nothing but water to survive. And you need to drink nothing but water to build muscle and build strength and all that good stuff. So the supplement industry, they want you to think, yeah, you need to drink some special drink to make gains. You get some guy who on Instagram with 1 million followers, who promotes a drink. Hey, I drink this before my workout, and look at me, I got big muscles. He doesn't tell you he's on a shit ton of steroids. He doesn't tell you that he could drink water and he'd have the same results. He doesn't tell you that in reality, he doesn't even drink what he's promoting. But he wants you to think that because he wants to make a sale. He gets a commission from every drink that you buy, or he has a coupon code that when you use his code that he posts on his Instagram, he gets a little commission. So they don't tell you that. So at the end of the day, these are the obvious scams that a lot of people fall for. Any other obvious supplement scams, Mobster, before we move in to talk about crooked businessmen?
I'll just think of a couple here, Steve. Let me have a look at some of the things I've written down here. Okay, here's one. And this was, I could think of two products, one where it was to do with how the product was put together, and one specifically where the product was spiked. So the first one was thus. There was a product, an energy product, similar to what Steve was just talking about earlier on, where one of the illegal at that time ingredients was estrogen. Now, estrogen is a stimulant. The problem was the molecular weight of estrogen is relatively high and was certainly relatively high to the molecular weight of the other ingredients. I'm thinking of a product, the first name of which was Ultimate, and I won't say the second name. You know what I'm on about, guys. So these first 10,000 canisters came out and people absolutely fucking loved them. Second batch, third batch, same again. The problem was, as the batches were being produced in larger and larger numbers, stock distribution across the US, where they were selling incredibly well, and then later on the rest of the world, meant that over time, traveling on a truck across down the highways and freeways of America, and then getting to the warehouses and then the shelves of the supplement stores, that the product would settle. And this is perfectly normal. Happens with cornflakes, happens with your breakfast cereal, happens with bags of flour, Steve. Product is fluffed up, fills the canister, and over time settles. The problem was that estrogen would settle at the bottom. So you would have product that would contain a little bit of estrogen, little bit, and then when you got to the bottom, it was nearly all estrogen. So people were suddenly going, it's okay. Oh my fucking God, Steve, it's absolutely Jesus. and having panic attacks, and people that were susceptible to heart conditions were suddenly freaking the fuck out and having to go to the hospital thinking they were having a heart attack, and they were still like fuck. So that was one. The other one, Steve, is let me have a look here. Oh yes, tainted. Okay, so around the same time, company was producing a product that was a little bit of everything. It was a little bit protein, a little bit stem, a little bit vitamins, and it was essentially meant to be everything a bodybuilder could possibly need, all in one product. And it had some effective ingredients in there. There was a good dose of protein. There was a sensible, decently ratioed vitamin in there, and so on. The problem was again the cost of this, putting it out there, how much can we charge, and how can we push this product, especially to begin with, in such a way that the users go, oh my god, this stuff is the nuts. So rumor has it, and I will say rumor, it'd be hard to without having a product test in front of me, that the first 1,000 or 10,000 subs at this product, which went all over the States and promoted quite heavily in the magazines, and people were absolutely raving on chatbots and early versions of bodybuilding forums and whatever, chat rooms, should I say, not chatbots, and so on and so forth, was that the product contained a powdered form of Dianabol, meaning you got a small amount of creatine, you got some vitamins, you got protein, but without you realizing it, you also got probably equivalent to 10, 15 milligrams per day per scoop of this product mixed into your drink of Dianabol. Lo and behold, thousands of the initial users, Steve, were putting on 4 or 5 pounds of muscle and getting great pumps down a gym. And their hair looked good and their eyes were bright and they were getting their daily dose of protein. But the reason why they were growing so well and getting such great results was that the product had been deliberately spiked with Dianabol. And this has been done with certain steroid-like ingredients. I can think of a couple of big name companies that's still around where they use steroid-like names, but they also actually contained a steroid-like ingredient. Some of the quote-unquote steroids and pro hormones that were included in certain supplements that were later banned and had to be removed, and people still look for them. And even products that contain certain stimulants where I've literally seen this on eBay, Steve, where I've seen products that claim to be the original formula. They would be 5, 10, or 15 years old. And I actually grasped them up. I actually contacted a couple of the companies where they'd reproduced the label that appeared to be the name of a big name supplement company, but had probably been produced on a home printer. And they looked very, very similar, almost identical, with just a few words here and there that were slightly different. And you had to know what you were looking for to realize that this wasn't that company, that the color label was slightly off, and so on and so forth. And God knows what would have been in those products there, Steve, just as an example.
Yeah.
And that's without even getting into the placebo effect of products and so on and so forth.
Let's move
Talk
on
about
to
the actual kind of company people that you just mentioned earlier on,
yeah, and
Steve.
I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let's talk about crooked businessman and why they target. And I talked about earlier why they are so coming into the supplement industry. And look, I'm not going to bullshit you guys. If you go online and you see these YouTubers and you see them, 95% of them, 95% of them are scammers. And I can give you names. I can give you names. I'm not going to do that. That's not what this show is all about. But, if they're on YouTube and they're doing videos, they're doing clickbait videos, they're trying to snake you in, they're trying to rake you in to make sure you buy their products. They're snake oil salesmen, they're crooked businessmen. And there's two main demographics that crooked businessmen target in any industry, not just the supplement industry, but specifically the supplement industry. They're going to be the older people, Monster, the boomers, your age group. And then they're going to be the young males, 16 to 25 years old. Those are the two demographics. Now, with the bodybuilding industry, there aren't very many older people who spend money to get jacked. All right. But they do spend more money under supplements. So the crooked businessmen, they're going to target your age group, Mobster. They're going to try to sell you guys certain things like
Yeah.
vitamins
Anti-aging
and
products, anti-aging products, yep.
yeah,
Vitamins, yep.
anti-aging products. Promise you, oh, you can get libido if you take my product and stuff like that to make you feel younger and all that stuff.
Yep.
But when it comes to the bodybuilding supplements specifically, they want to target the young male demographic. A lot of you that listen to our podcast are part of that demographic. And look,
Get more
that's
girls, build more protein,
exactly,
attract
yeah.
more
Let me
honey,
finish and
and
then
play
I'll
on
let
your
you.
insecurities. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, the young male, you don't have experience yet in life. You're going to be naive. You haven't been ripped off in your life yet. Okay, the biggest rip off you've had is when you were a kid and your sister or your brother stole the lollipop out of your hand. That's the biggest thing that happened to you. But once you get older, you're going to get ripped off, and you're going to learn not to be less trusting for people. And that's what happens. The same thing with my cat. When my cat used to go out, he used to go up to every dog out there to say hi. And then he realized as he got older that not every dog is nice. So now he's learned to avoid dogs. He's like, stay away from me for dogs. But he had to learn that as a kitten that not every dog is nice. So at the end of the day, they're going to target your insecurities. They're going to target you to, you want more muscle and less fat. They're going to use bimbo women in jacuzzis. They're going to use the image of the alpha masculine man. They're going to and you're going to look to these businessmen and see the fake image of that they live in a big house. They get plenty of blonde bimbos. They drive fast cars. They travel the world. It's all
Yep.
bullshit. These guys don't even do that, but they want to perceive that image to rake you in, and they want
Yep.
to fool you into buying their products so that you too can be a chick maggot. You too can have women in jacuzzi. Look, they pay the women to take pictures with them. They pay the women to do the videos of them in jacuzzis. They rent a Lamborghini for the day. It's not that expensive to rent a Lamborghini for a day and drive it around and pretend you're some big shot. It's not that big a deal to try. I saw a guy, it's a funny video mobster in the bodybuilding industry. He's like, look at me, I'm in Thailand, I'm staying at a resort. And I had to laugh because the resort he was staying at was literally probably like $25 a day to stay at the resort. It's like, dude, you're not a big shot because you went to Thailand and you're staying in some roach motel, which is like 10 miles inland from, and it's not even a nice resort. You're not even staying at a 5-star resort, but you're making people think that you're some world traveler and that you're some genius
Steve,
who,
how many times in the last 2 or 3 years have we seen quote unquote alpha male training courses that were offering to teach you the secrets of alpha maleness?
yeah, you
Like,
just want to
let's
like
be
reach in your
honest.
computer and just slap these like alpha males like in the face. Like, dude,
Yeah,
shut the fuck up already with your alpha male
ten
shit. Like,
thousand
shut the
dollars and I'll
fuck
show
up.
you how to do what I'm doing.
Oh my
twenty
God.
thousand dollars and
Those
you can be my
guys,
pal.
dude, we should have a fucking attorney general in this country literally pull up those videos and fucking go out and like literally raid those people's houses and fucking
Yep.
arrest them and put a video of that
Everything
online. If
rented.
you do that
They're talking
shit,
about how rich they are.
yeah,
Everything is rented.
yeah.
You literally said, Steve,
And their
one very
life is
famous.
miserable. They like
Yeah.
divorced like twice. They're fucking losers. I've run into
One
these
of one of
people in
them's even
supermarkets. They're
admitted that they
losers.
paid the girls to be in a jacuzzi that Steve's talking about. That's a great example. Claimed that he'd won a certain amount of money playing poker, and yet the actual poker industry said, well, he has won some money on a couple of games, but it's not the. I think they talked about $2 or $3 million, which is a substantial lump of cash. But he was claiming he'd won $45 million.
Yeah,
As an
because he wants
example.
to hide his scam money that he's gotten, so he'll use poker or any gambling. That's called washing your money. And really, in
Yes.
reality, he's a losing poker player, but he won't tell you he's a losing poker player. He wants you to think he made it that way because he wants to promote as being. That's another thing. The poker industry too is crooked the same way. They want to give an image that all poker players can become rich and stuff. In reality, 95% of poker players lose money. 95% of gamblers lose money. That's the
Yeah.
reality. How do you
Otherwise, the
think they
industry
built
wouldn't make any
Vegas?
money. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about best supplements that actually work, and then we'll get into some of these N2BM products that
Yeah,
are
let me
legit.
touch upon this briefly, Steve. So, having been in the supplement industry and have obviously done podcasts on way that supplement companies can work and need to build muscle specifically. So, we've talked about their two biggest products. I'll say these the way it is, Steve: is N2 Guard and HC Generate. The first one is an organ protector, and the second one is a maleness slash testosterone booster because it enhances not just hopefully your natural levels of testosterone, but also your organ health when it comes to your testicles and your prostate and so on and so forth. So when we've talked about their products, when we've talked about their ingredients, we've talked about, and I've used this phrase earlier on, making sure that where a product needs to be standardized because that's what was shown to work in the original study, that the research, then their products are standardized. I've talked about, for example, sourcing ingredients. And I said on another show, Steve, that some ingredients are available in higher levels and lower levels, depending on how much was produced of the crop that year. So, for example, Tribulus terrastris, you want a specific kind, you want it standardized. Was the crop this year successful? Was 200 tons worldwide produced, or was it only 100 tons? If it's 100 tons, the price goes up. It's that much more expensive. In 200-ton years, hopefully the price will come down. It can be hard when you're competing in the rest of the market to source enough of the ingredients. We've literally seen Need to Build Muscle run out of certain products they're selling purely and simply because they were unable to get hold of the product, the ingredient that they want, and they've had to wait till that product ingredients become available and then go out and produce another 10,000 to 100,000 tubs. That's the nature of the beast, because they got not substituted a cheaper, lower grade ingredient in lieu of the more expensive, effective ingredient. That's obvious. Effective dosages, Steve. I said, for example, in a study, if a study showed that a standardized product at 200 milligrams was incredibly useful and they were able to show through blood tests the benefits of this particular ingredient on a marker in your blood, then you don't want to buy a product that only contains half that dose. You can do that, and this applies to Need Build Muscle, if other ingredients in that product benefit you in a similar way. Then you have what's called synergy, where 2 or 3 ingredients will act, for example, on your blood lipids in a positive way, bringing the bad cholesterol down and the good cholesterol up, just as an example. But again, if you are claiming to have a product that contains product X, and product X has got maybe a trademark or a patent against it, it's the one that was in the study, you want your product to contain as close to that effective dose as possible. So you absolutely want to do this. Here's the thing again, and Steve and I have talked about Need to Build Muscle in this particular way before. We said, you, the listener, probably don't know the names of the 2 guys that put up the company, started the company, and where they came from and why, versus other companies making the owner of the company kind of like a star athlete themselves, where that person's personality, and again, I use the snake oil salesman as an example, is almost, well, this person is well known, they're great on the chat shows, like Steve said, certain particular shows, and they've been brought on, they're an ex-drug abuser, they've recovered from drugs, they may make a success because they're selling all these supplements. Their company is one of the fastest growing companies in America, and they're getting awards for being a fast growing company, not necessarily for producing fast product. And because of that, they seem to be a great success. And then what happens, and I'm thinking of one particular example here, Steve, was very nearly number 1. And then he went on a drunken rampage with the boat, got arrested, business partner in a previous concern that he'd had went to jail for arguably what was spike products, and so on and so forth. So it was all over the place. And though he had made a financial success, the argument then became was the products as good as they claimed? Were they as effective as they claimed? Could he be trusted? And so on and so forth. So the idea that a former drug addict was a success story making loads of money was a great thing to hang your hat on. But ultimately, that come around and bit him on the arse. And I think the only reason that he's kind of pulled himself back from really going crazy is that he has 2 kids, and this kind of sort of basing himself on the idea of being a good father and representing himself as a good father is the only reason that company hasn't got the shit completely and fucked itself up and sort of burnt out and been sold on or whatever else. So this happens. Something silly example here, Steve, just to finish on this particular thought process, but we talk a bit more about Need to Build Muscle, is companies are quite often produce products, one of which is very similar on paper to the organ bits that I refer to earlier, N2Guard, but is made to a price. And the price point, unfortunately, is less than 1/3 of what N2Guard sells for. And when we compared those, and just these 2 examples, when we compared N2Guard to that particular company's products, it was, I believe, 7 ingredients versus 22, I'm going to say, off the top of my head, Steve, without the notes in front of me. And 1/3 or less of the effective dosages. And therefore, the idea that it was one third or less of the price meant you realistically, to get the same dosage effect, the same beneficial effect, you would have to take 3 tubs. And again, it didn't even have all the ingredients in. So not only would you taken 3 tubs to get anywhere close to the effective dose of some of the ingredients that were in into guard, meaning essentially it would have ended up costing the same, you still didn't get the same ingredient ratios and profiles and standardization. So talk a little bit about that sort of way that N2Guard, sorry, and Need to Build Muscle specifically, Steve, has pushed himself forward as a company producing solid products.
Yeah, and then we talk about Intugar and AC Generate, and there are two supplements. We talked about supplements earlier that don't work, that are scams. These two products actually do work. So they were developed through trial and error. They're designed for serious bodybuilders who do cycle steroids, but you don't have to cycle steroids to use them. But if you do cycle steroids, they are a must use. And I've been using their products for over 15 years myself. Mobster's been using their products for at least 10 or 12 years. You will know they work because of the blood work you can get while on them. And you'll see. You'll also feel the changes when you're on a cycle and you run out of N2 guard. A week later, you feel different. Your sleep gets affected, your energy gets affected. And then you get a bottle. After you order it, you get another bottle and you start taking it again and you feel better within a few days. So you'll know it's working, not just by feeling, but
Steve, let
also,
me interrupt you for a second and I'll let you talk about this as well.
yeah.
We've had what we would call non believers on the forums trying to find a product that costs less or using multiple products. And some do, and they are by combining 15 or 20 products, able to get close to what you see in N2 Guard by way of example. And then we've literally, in the last 7 to 10 days, someone came on the forum, and we've seen this again and again and again, and put up their blood numbers and said, I was a non-believer, but I started running into God recently, and my numbers have changed. Talk about the amount of times we've seen that happen.
Yep, it definitely happens. And people, I've seen several guys who were non-believers. Now they use these products in their log. You can come on the forum and check out their logs. You see them using N2 Guard. You see them using AC Generate. And so they're a believer now, and they know that it's a very important product. So N2 Guard is a support supplement that has over 40 ingredients to protect your organs and much more. And it's also a comprehensive vitamin and mineral supplement all in one. So you don't have to keep wasting money on these crappy vitamins and mineral supplements that Mobster was talking about that have barely any dosing. N2Guard has it all, so you'll save money having to take your multivitamin, and it has so much other stuff, including things like tutka and milk thistle and pricklive and things to help your kidneys and things to help your heart health, the red yeast rise, all kinds of things that are in there. And you can go look at the ingredients. It's amazing. AC Generate has eight of the best ingredients to help you on cycle, and PCT helps balance your hormones and naturally boost your testosterone levels. It also helps your heart health as well. So it's also a great supplement. So between those two supplements, ideally, you want to run the N2 guard on cycle, and want to run the AC Generate and PCT. But you can run both year
Yes.
round at any time, whether you use steroids or not, and whether you're cycling or not. You could still use them ideally. So it's a great option, but it's a must. N2 guard's a must use on a cycle specifically, and AC
Yeah.
Generate is a must use in PCT. You'll
Both
make
these products, Steve, take a multi-pronged approach. So let me give you an example again. You can go out and buy, probably from your local mom and pa health shop right now, a very simple, very straightforward testosterone booster that literally just aims at one facet. As an example, Steve and I have done shows on sexual health where we talked about HC Generate. And we said, for example, you've got the gland in the neck, you've got your testicles, you obviously have your penis, in the case of men, and you have your prostate. And some ingredients will only work on or try to work on one aspect of what makes you sexually fertile, gives you good erections, and so on and so forth. And it's specifically post steroid cycle recovery, so that your sexual health, your ability to procreate, etc., is as close to normal or as healthy as it possibly can be after you use a steroid cycle. It's no good having a single pronged approach. Some companies would use ingredients that seem to be and there are multiple names for some ingredients, which can confuse some people. The latest thing, whereas in reality, certain ingredients, I'm thinking specifically in the case of Into Guard Steve Hawthornberry, have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years as a product that people were using hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. They've always had the benefit, of course, as a means of boosting your vitamin C, and specifically as a product that you can take in the natural environment around you at that time that was good for your heart. And obviously, over time, people started to recognize that those people that were taking a hawthornberry had healthier hearts than those that did not. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel in certain particular regards. But what you need to do, and this is something else as well, Steve. I know from working with a flavor house when I had my protein products there are certain people in the supplement industry. These are the ones that you never get to hear about, who literally work to blend products together. There are people that can go and research ingredients, very good at researching ingredients, but not good at businessmen. There are people that work for very large manufacturing companies that produce an enormous amount of supplements for many, many brands that we've all heard of. Again, Mar and Pa, GNC, Holland and Barrett's, Walmart's, etc. The big name brands sometimes are produced by only a handful of companies in the industry. And each of these companies will have, and I've actually worked with a team of people like this when I was working at my meat company job many, many years ago. They are, for want of a better phrase, blenders. Their job is to take the ingredients and put them together in a certain particular way to produce the outcome that we're looking for. So in the case of N2Guard, we want a product that protects your organs, that produces good markers for blood post-cycle. And in the case of HG Generate, we want something that's going to especially help you after a cycle of steroids, but even with your testicular health and your ability to recover from steroids when you're using it, if you're using it on cycles, there are some additional benefits. And these people will sit down with the researchers and say, listen, we can get you this ingredient at this level with this quality, but we're going to bend it with this ingredient. So we don't want too much of this. We want a little bit of that. It's going to be close to the numbers that you're looking for. And certain companies will do that and produce it to $30. Other companies, and I'm thinking specifically here, need to build muscle, say, make me the best products you can, and we'll work out what the numbers are at the end. This is the reason why some people complain about the prices, Steve. But they need to, as we are doing with this show, explain to you the benefits of getting the right ingredients at the right ratios from the right sources at the right times of the year. Because even the time of year, some ingredients are sourced is important. Winter versus summer and so on and so forth, and the right place in the world that the ingredient is to come from. And just a bunch of things that most people won't even have to think about. But when they start to do their research, they realize it does contain an effective dose. It is the right leaf. It is the right stem. It does come from this particular part of the world. That's the reason why it costs the price that it does, but that's the reason why the goddamn product works so well. Talk a little bit about the guys that actually put the company together, Steve, and why they got started in the industry.
Yeah, and if you guys want to check it out, come on the forum and you'll be able to find out where to get N2BM products. And N2BM.com is the website. So at the end of the day, the company was started by a couple guys. They're just normal guys. They didn't have much money, but they put their money together and they were able to start the company. And they wanted to develop products geared to people like us, people who are serious, people who are the real alphas, not the people on social media who want to show you how to become an alpha or claim they're alphas, because they're not. They're betas. I can name you the names. They're fucking betas. We're the real alphas. The real alphas, and Mobster always says this, are the people who don't go around saying on social media that we're alphas. You know what I'm saying? So that's the real alpha. So at the end of the day, we want to look good, we want to feel good, we want to
Yep.
protect ourselves, and a big part of that is using the proper supplements. So that's what they wanted to do, and they did it very, very well. So N2BM is a great company. N2Guard and AC Generate, they're two of my favorite supplements. They're two of my favorite supplements, not
Yes.
not some of
Yes.
my favorite supplements. They are my two favorite supplements,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
work incredibly well. So definitely come to the forum if you want to learn more about these supplements and if you want to learn more about supplement scans. And always, guys, if you're not sure about your supplement, come on the forum, post up the supplement, and we'll be able to help you out, lead you in the right directions.
When
So
it comes to those two products, guys, you can come onto the forums as we just talked about and literally find examples of non-believers coming believers and literally find where they've had their bloods tested and they will post, this is tests that they've paid for at their own goddamn expense, Steve, post the results of medical tests. They've been to the
yep,
doctor, they've had an issue, they tried the product, the issue has improved, and they would literally post up their test before and after. And this happens probably every 2 or 3 months that we get someone come on and post up their bloods. Of course, in reality, it's happened a lot more than that. It's just the people posting up the bloods, and you can come on. So it's not just me and Stevesmi pushing a product or saying that we think the company's great or whatever else. You can literally see the black and white of these blood tests, where the cholesterol's improved, where their lipids have improved, where the nitrogen and protein in their blood's got better, where the numbers that indicate good heart or liver or kidney numbers have improved, and where these numbers are on their blood test. And you can see the improvement where they were red before and they're back in the black now,
yep.
they're in range or even better, Steve. Yeah. Please note, we are not doctors and your opinions are ours. It is our view based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcasts are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.